The Indigo Disc, an amazing, extravagant piece of fine-ass work. I mean, I think across the board it's almost unanimously agreed upon that this shit was heat. Keyword, almost. As with any review, I'm going to be discussing what I like and dislike, so please keep in mind that these are my opinions and nobody else's, so if you disagree with what I say, then you can go You can leave a comment about it down below. Now, without further ado, here are my thoughts, my opinions, and my interpretation of the Indigo Disc DLC. Continuing off the back of the teal mask, we are invited to join the ranks of the Blueberry Academy, or the BBA, where a lot of the focus is put on us and Kieran's relationship straight from the get-go. It's almost like we're the main characters or something. However, this time around, we're on an artificial island housing one of the coolest ideas in Pokemon history, even though the Manaphy movie already kinda did it. But you're almost immediately put into the crew of the BB League Elite Four, of which consists of Unova trainers Lacey, who's cute and cuddly, Master Chef Crispin, numbers are certainly my thing Amaris, and my personal favorite of the bunch, Drayton. Although, standing atop them all is none other than the previous record holder of being the biggest pussy in existence, Kieran, who is now a bona fide badass champion of the Blueberry League, and a little bit of a fucking nutjob. After we make friends with everybody and our totally not manipulative best buddy, Drayton, we set off on a quest to climb the ladder of the BB League. Through the adventure, we run into familiar faces such as Carmine, Perrin, Professor Briar, and a few others. We get to learn the natures of our new characters, and the whole time it's amazing. I genuinely felt like I was watching a Pokemon special anytime all 5 main characters were on screen. Each new individual felt well established and connected to the prior lore that we had experienced in the previous DLC, with their relationships with Kieran. I personally found it really interesting how they all perceived and reacted to him acting like an asshole. At first I didn't really care for any of the newbies, other than Lacey. I just love her design, I swear. But after getting more insight on the character of Drayton, I was open to learning more about the others, especially for when it came time to take them on in battle. After Amaris' fight, we see how caring she can be, despite being all about facts and logic. After Lacey's, we get to see that she's a little bit of a vanity queen who can be strategic. After Crispin's, we see that the dude just likes to cook. After beating up your friends, you get to beat up your best friend, who definitely didn't do a bump before coming here, and you duke it out once and for all. Then, once it's done, he cries a little bit and everyone agrees that you're just him, and we move on. So we meet up with Briar and Carmine, and off we go to the Great Crater of Paldea. This is where the DLC not only shows you that it was worth the wait, but the build-up. That shit goes fucking scawampus. After rummaging through the late professor's stuff, you use a disc given to you by the champion in the lab where you face the final boss in order to make your way deeper in the crater, and navigate your way through a couple caves until you reach a certain point of interest. And this little thing's name is Terapagos, and it is adorable. I was also thrown off by how suddenly Kieran caught that thing, as I thought more of a fight would be put up or something. I mean, surely... This was exhilarating. I actually felt like we were kind of fucked for a moment, and that's saying a lot for a Pokemon game. The battle was epic, the cutscenes helped propel the momentum and keep me on the edge of my seat. Plus the music, oh my god. Hold on, can we do a music segment just real quick? It's really fucking good. I'm gonna make a video about it later, I promise. After the crescendo of the battle with Terapagos, it's settled that you get to keep it, and Briar apologizes for almost getting everyone killed. The crew then make their way back to the Blueberry Academy with a sigh of relief, but Kieran stops dead in his tracks. This scene is something I needed to make this all feel worth it. Oftentimes, I blaze through the story of Pokemon games, rarely thinking twice or looking back on the journey. However, this was different. The writers knew the story they wanted to tell with Kieran's character. They knew the kind of rival they wanted to portray. Most, if not all other rivals, aren't much deeper than the impression they give you upon first meeting them, or so I feel. However, Kieran's presence is felt all throughout the Indigo disc, from the very beginning, when everyone is questioning your relationship, to the very end when he delivers this apology. The whole time, your mind is on what and how Kieran feels through all of this. Unlike rivals like Silver, Hop, and even Gladion, we are given more unique interactions and shown more sides of Kieran that lead us to believe that he has thoughts and feelings that, like anyone else, are hard to get a hold of, and in times of stress can make us implode. I feel Kieran embodies the frustration one can have when coming to terms with the fact that someone may be better than you at a particular thing. However, that doesn't mean one is obsolete. In fact, they are very capable, just in their own way. Overall, the plot of the Indigo disc gets 5 happy Togedemaros out of 6. I really like the time put into each character to make them feel relevant, with others like Briar even taking the main stage, when previously given a backseat. I also really enjoyed the new types of relationships we got to see form between your rivals or friends. The only thing that stops me from calling this a masterpiece are the decisions made with Crispin and Carmine, as both were characters I really wanted to see contribute to the story, and though they did, especially Carmine, it wasn't as much as I had hoped. I personally love character-driven stories, and this felt like one that had nowhere to go but with its cast, and I really enjoyed that. Now, on to how it felt to be there. The Indigo disc was not only a blast to see unfold, but it was also a blast to play. There were a couple new additions that I think helped spice up the gameplay, along with introducing its own game loop. The terrarium is where you'll be spending most of your time, but I think that's a good thing, as the areas provided feel vast and sometimes even a little overwhelming. While in the terrarium, familiar Pokemon across all generations will show up and give you reason to burn some Pokeballs for a bit, alongside the new BBQ system that gives you reason to do shit like take photos or knock out an entire forest. For a short while, this was all the terrarium is good for, but very quickly does that change, as once you progress through the story enough, not very much, you gain the ability to challenge the Elite Four in each of the respective biomes. I feel this gives you a clear goal that you can chase while doing the previously mentioned catching and BBQs on the side, or vice versa. The loop is really up to you. However, if you're like me and catch anything you see, then you're gonna run out of new Pokemon to catch very quickly, and on top of that, BBQs don't offer much other than a couple points to hold on to for dear life until you ultimately get 3,000 in order to bump up the variety of Pokemon that spawn. In my previous video, I complained about this very aspect, so I won't go into much depth about it here, but I personally think this system is flawed. You spend way too much time getting way too little, and unfortunately, these BBP or Blueberry points are what's going to give most, if not all, of the new content. It's not bad per se, I just don't think the points are high enough to make it feel worthwhile. Unless you're playing with friends, that is. Moving on, there are also trainers scattered around the terrarium, with each trainer wielding a well thought out team. You see, this DLC primarily focuses on double battles and a more competitive mindset. This was something I was a huge fan of. For years, people have been clamoring about the difficulty of Pokemon, and honestly, it wasn't really a gripe of mine until playing this DLC, as anytime I went back to Paldea or Kitakami to finish some stuff I hadn't before, I found myself missing that intensity and the double battle format. This new difficulty spike is a welcome addition. I got my ass handed to me so many times that I genuinely started looking up guides and builds that I could use for my own team, and now the Pokemon I rock are unrecognizable to the ones I came into the DLC with. I even abandoned my starter. Honestly, when it came to these battles, I feel that this was the depth that I've been missing my whole life in Pokemon. I know the competitive scene has always been around, but for once, I learned about the stat differences in Pokemon natures, and I wasn't bored out of my mind. I wanted to know so I could knock Drayton at his stupid fucking bridge, bitch. While we're on the subject though, let's talk about the Elite Four. I really enjoyed the trials that were presented, as they were not only fun little minigames, but they also gave some insight into the type of people these characters are. Amaris had the best test by far, allowing your Koraidon or Miraidon the ability of flight, and the controls felt surprisingly smooth. I'm not gonna lie though, ever since they changed the gliding for the Kirai and Mirai from the one that was present in Arceus, I lost all hope, but this flying feels good. It feels like it should, maybe a little slow, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. On the opposite side of things, Lacey's challenge was the most disappointing, as it was just a Pokemon quiz. Now, I don't know how you guys feel, but whenever a Pokemon game gives me a quiz, it feels like the most baby shit to ever be babied, and I'm never a big fan. Usually all the questions are basic as hell, and not only do I not learn anything new, but I go brain dead for about 0.5 seconds and recall nothing of what just happened. It really wasn't my favorite. Crispin and Drayton's challenges were in a solid middle. I think the ingredient exchange posed a fun little puzzle, and Drayton's classic battle these guys first format was nothing new, but it certainly didn't get old. It was honestly kind of what I expected all the other trials to be. Now, at the time of this recording, all of my amounted blueberry points have gone to upgrading the terrarium, so I haven't really had the chance to try out the club room or get my hands on any of the legendaries. I know I've kind of been all over the place when it comes to the gameplay segment of this video, but it's honestly because I don't know what to cover and when, as there is so much shit that was fun as hell to do. If I'm to stop sucking this game's dick so hard and talk about some negatives, I would start with the Synchro Machine. I remember when the second trailer for this DLC dropped and they announced this new device, I was ecstatic over the chance to play as my Pokemon. However, when the DLC finally came out and I finally got my hands on the thing, I was disappointed, to say the least. I figured it would be a small feature and there wouldn't be much to it mechanics-wise, but I at least thought there may be some fun platforming puzzles or something of the like to do as your Pokemon. But nope, the most you're able to interact with are other Pokemon, and even then, the only thing you can do is auto battle them. Hell, you can't even jump. All in all, I think the gameplay side of this DLC gets a solid 4 hungry Chargebugs out of 6. It brought along a ton of new features that I wasn't expecting, but with it came a few disappointments, such as the Synchro Machine. However, the world was more lively and fun to traverse than what we had experienced in Kitakami, and that shows in almost every facet. Ultimately, I think this DLC was fantastic. It provided some much needed flair, character, and fun to the world of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And I think this DLC pack will go down in history as one of the coolest moments in Pokemon, whether it's the story of Blood Moon Ursa Luna, Ogerpon and the Loyal 3, Kieran's arc, or the mystery surrounding Terapagos itself. So my final score for the Indigo disc is a whopping 7.5 out of 10. It was awesome, fantastic, beautiful, and amazing. But honestly, too much water.